All right, today we're checking into the Stanley Hotel. It's one of the most famous hotels in the world. Not really for its luxury, but for its legends, its ghosts, and of course the terrifying horror story it inspired.
But what really makes a place haunted? Is it a dark past, restless spirits? Well, for the Stanley Hotel, the answer is a lot more complicated and honestly way more interesting than you might think.
You see, the hotel's whole paranormal reputation really kicked off with one man and one book. Back in 1974, a young author named Stephen King spent a single night at the Stanley, and that one fateful stay inspired his absolute masterpiece, The Shining. The legend really begins with that one stay. King and his wife, Tabitha, they showed up just as the hotel was closing down for the winter. So get this, they were the only guests in the entire sprawling, empty building. King talked about this truly bizarre thing that happened. After they unpacked, he and his wife went for a walk. When they got back to their room, they found all their stuff had been put back into their suitcases. And with pretty much the entire staff gone for the season, there was just no logical explanation. That single eerie moment is what planted the seed for the Overlook Hotel. But here's the thing. The story of the Stanley Hotel didn't start with ghosts. Not at all. It began with health, innovation, and a brilliant inventor who was literally fighting for his life. So how on earth did this grand resort become such a paranormal landmark? The man behind the hotel was Freeland Oscar Stanley, and let me tell you, he did not come to Colorado looking for ghosts. Nope. In 1903, after being diagnosed with tuberculosis, he came seeking a cure in the fresh mountain air. Stanley's journey was just remarkable. He arrived in Colorado in 1903, fell in love with Estes Park, and just 6 years later, boom! In 1909, his magnificent hotel opened to the public. It's an incredible testament to his vision.
And Stanley was so much more than a hotelier. He was an absolute genius inventor. Beyond creating the famous Stanley steamer car with his brother, he patented the airbrush and developed a photographic dry plate process that he later sold to Eastman Kodak. A true innovator.
So what's this number? That's the world land speed record, set by a Stanley steamer car in 1906. Let that sink in for a second. A steam-powered car from the early 1900s was the fastest vehicle on the entire planet. It just goes to show you, the man behind this supposedly haunted hotel was in reality a forward-thinking scientific mind. So how did the story of a scientific innovator get so twisted into all these ghost tales? Well, over the years, the real history and the famous fiction, they just started to merge. Staff and guests began reporting their own strange encounters, and pretty soon, the hotel gained a reputation for having a different kind of resident. The hotel is now said to be home to several famous spirits. In room 217, a chambermaid named Elizabeth Wilson supposedly unpacks guest bags. Down in the music room, F.O.'s wife Flora reportedly plays the piano. And up on the 4th floor, people claim they hear the phantom sounds of children running up and down the halls. The legend of Elizabeth Wilson in room 217 is actually rooted in a real and pretty dramatic event. Back in 1911, a gas leak caused a massive explosion while she was lighting the lamps. She survived, but she was seriously injured. F.O. Stanley paid all her medical bills and offered her a job for life. Ironically, his kindness is what helps cement her legacy as the hotel's most famous ghost. So we've got the history and we've got the legends. But what happens when science checks in? Well, a team of investigators decided to find out, armed with a bunch of equipment and a very healthy dose of skepticism. Okay, take room 401, famous for a closet door that opens and closes all on its own. Was it a ghost? Well, investigators used a seismometer and found the real cause. It was just vibrations from the hotel's old antique elevator, which is located right behind the wall. In another room, a psychic reported feeling this overwhelming paranormal energy. So investigators pulled out their EMF meters, those detect electromagnetic fields, and the readings went off the charts. The cause wasn't a ghost, but a massive, unshielded electrical power line running right through that exact spot in the wall. And you know, sometimes the explanation is a little more furry. While walking through a dark lobby, an investigator was startled by a pair of glowing eyes staring back from the shadows. But when he flipped on the lights, it wasn't some spirit. It was a raccoon that had snuck in through an open window and was just chilling on a sofa. So after finding logical and, sometimes furry explanations for individual claims, the investigators decided to tackle the biggest theory of all, that the hotel's haunting was caused by a powerful energy field coming from the very ground beneath it, a geological haunting.
This geological haunting theory, it sounded pretty scientific, right? It suggested that underground quartz and magnetite deposits were acting like a giant paranormal battery. But when investigators traced the source of this very compelling claim, it didn't lead to a geologist. It led to someone from the gift shop.
Determined to get a real answer, the team requested official geological data from the U.S. Department of Agriculture. The reaction from a scientist with a 30-year career? It's priceless. He was totally surprised but agreed to help conduct the first-ever scientific soil survey of the Stanley Hotel property.
And this was a truly rigorous, multi-day process. First, the team mapped the entire property with GPS. Then, they conducted an electromagnetic analysis of the soil. Next, they used ground-penetrating radar to scan deep underground. And finally, they collected physical soil samples for a full lab analysis.
And after all of that, the final verdict? The geology is completely normal. The soil is mostly just crumbled schist, which is consistent with the entire region. Those rumored massive deposits of quartz and magnetite confirmed to be false. The scientific bedrock for the hotel's most popular haunting theory just wasn't there.
So this leaves us with a final, and I think a really fascinating question. If the geology is normal, and the famous claims all have logical explanations, what is the true source of the Stanley Hotel's power? Maybe the most powerful force at work here isn't a ghost at all, but the enduring magic of a great story.